Hi, I just want to share a screen with you of the Excel spreadsheet that is used to illustrate the sectoral transformation of an economy as productivity rises in the agricultural sector and productivity rises in the industrial sector, and people move from the lower productivity agricultural sector to the higher productivity industrial sector. So we have a simple spreadsheet here so that you can try different numbers of different rates of productivity growth and rates of sectoral structural transformation of movement between the ag sector and the industrial sector. And you can kind of see what's going on and decompose the two sources of productivity growth. So I'm just going to very quickly walk through the Excel spreadsheet. And so we start over here where we have an initial labor productivity of 90. So each labor produces 90 units of value. So we're kind of unitless here. We can think of these as indices of productivity. And of course, the agricultural sector is enormous and very varied. So we're aggregating all that to a single number. And then we have, sorry, this is total labor productivity. So we have the agricultural sector, 80 here, and then we have the industrial sector with productivity of 180 here. And we start with 90% of the workers in the agricultural sector and only 10% of the workers in the industrial sector. And then we can compute, you see up here is the formula for our average overall productivity. And we can see that excuse me, hit my escape button, that average overall productivity is 90. So that's 0.9 times 8 plus 0.1 times 180. So that gives us an overall productivity of 90. Now, we're going to have a couple of numbers here that'll be the numbers we manipulate. 0.02 is 2%. That's our agricultural productivity growth. 0.02 is also 2%. That's our assumed initial industrial productivity growth. And for now, we'll assume that 0 fraction of the labor moves from the agricultural sector to the industrial sector. So let's see what happens over time. So we notice that over time, the agricultural sector increases productivity by 2% every year. The formula is right here, right? So it's just 1 plus 0.02 times the previous year's agricultural productivity. Industry productivity increases by 2% a year. So again, we have just 1 plus 0.02 times the previous year's productivity. And we just copy that down. So industrial productivity is just increasing 2% a year. Labor productivity is increasing 2% a year. This is the absolute change in product then from year to year, productivity. The shares don't change over time. So they're always 90% in the agricultural sector and 10% in the, so there's no change in the share. And then we get total labor productivity then changing over time because each one is growing at 2%. And over here, we can calculate the overall change in labor productivity. You see the formula. It's just the difference between this year and last year's divided by last year's. So we multiply that by 100 to get the percent change. And that's just 2% because by definition, both are growing at 2% and there's no sectoral transformation. So now let's suppose that they stay growing at the same amounts, but now every year we have 2% of the agricultural labor force, 2 percentage points of the agricultural labor force moves over to the industrial labor force. And so now all our numbers update, right? And now we see that total productivity of labor is growing considerably faster than the 2% before. It's growing about 4%, 4.3% to start with, and down to about 3.7% by the end. Why is that? Well, remember that labor productivity in the industrial sector is higher than labor productivity in the ag sector. So when 2 percentage points of the workforce move over from the ag sector to the industrial sector, suddenly their productivity more than doubles, right? It goes from 80 to 180 in the first year, and then as productivities rise over time. It's shifting a little bit differently each time, but still almost always doubling, doubling all the way through to the bottom. So even in the 15th year, you're going from 107 to 242 when those 2 percentage points of the labor force move out of the ag sector. So we see here's the ag sector declining steadily till by the 15th year, it's only 60% of the labor force, and the industrial sector rises steadily till it's 40% of the labor force. And here we get their respective shares. What if we had the industrial sector productivity growing by more than the ag productivity? So what if industrial productivity was growing at 5% a year? And what if we could get 3 percentage points of the labor force moving from ag to industry? Now, just those, all that's what we need. No civil wars, no pandemics, no climate change, and we get 7% growth per year, which is exactly what any citizen in any African economy that's currently at about $1,000 per capita per year, this is the kind of growth rate, the Chinese style growth rate that they would want to see. And our little exercise here, our little model says, that's really feasible if we can have industrial productivity growth at 5% a year, and we can have 3% of the population moving out of ag every year into cities. There's of course a lot of challenges to doing that, but it's certainly feasible, as China showed.